ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Risotto!
All righty, welcome. What's going on? We are back and ready to roll. I am Steven Risotto. It has been such a long time, folks, that we have had an episode of RizzoCast. I think we maybe had one in January. That might have been the last time. It is now October, so it is definitely a long time coming. I have been settling in at my job at 95.7 The Game. I celebrated my year-long anniversary just recently at 95.7 The Game as a producer. It's been great, but it's also been pretty busy, and I haven't had time to produce these episodes pretty much at all. And I've hung on to this one. I recorded this upcoming episode that you're going to listen to in just a second in January, right before spring training. So if you hear any spring training references, they're a little outdated. I haven't had the time to upload, but I'm finally getting off my butt, uploading this wonderful episode, and we're back with RizzoCast, guys. I'm finally at a point at my job where I could kind of return a little bit, give myself a chance to record more of these episodes. I love doing it, so why stop? Anyways, in case you're new here, I'm Steven Risotto. I used to cover the San Francisco Giants for SF Bay. I'm currently a producer, like I said, for 95.7 The Game. I'm also the host of RizzoCast, a podcast that features current and former big league players, coaches, fans, media, and others who are regarded as some of the brightest minds around the game of baseball. Today's guest is Randy Choate, a former big league pitcher who pitched in parts of 15 seasons at the major league level across 6 different teams. He is the exact example, folks, of the left-handed specialist. That's a term that really doesn't exist anymore with the 3-batter minimum being implemented in the Major League Baseball. His job in a big league bullpen, folks, was to get the opponent's best left-handed hitters out, and he did so for a decade and a half, really. We discuss his big league career, if there was a lefty reliever group chat, what happens in a bullpen, the infamous errant throw in the 2014 playoffs that made Giants fans happy. So much more to get into with Randy. Again, this was recorded back in January. It's now October. Bear with me on any references that were made at the beginning of the episode. This is episode number 181 of RizzoCast. We're back. Let's go. Let's get started. All right, and we are back on RizzoCast with Randy Choate. And Randy is nice enough to take some time out of his very busy day. He was telling me before we got on here that he is living the retired life, so maybe we don't know how busy it is. Randy, thanks for coming on the show and welcome.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and I always ask a lot of the former big leaguers the same question when I start, and I'll ask you too. This season is going to mark 10 years of you being removed from the big leagues, and we're days away from February, right? We know what February means with baseball. Pitchers and catchers report soon. The countdown has started. Do you still occasionally get that itch to pitch again?
To pitch again? Sometimes I miss competing a little bit, but not really. It's probably the standard answer that most guys will give you is being around the guys, but I really love the routine of all of it. That was what was great for me. You'd come home, hopefully only have a couple of months of off season, but you come home, you do your off season stuff. And then, my wife always hates Valentine's Day because that's basically when we'd always report. So don't celebrate that a whole lot because I was always gone. I saw a lot of the teams are reporting even before Valentine's Day this year, but really when you get in and you can be around those guys, you kind of have your process. Spring training, that first week you're super excited, and then after that you're like, oh, okay, when's the season start, so that you can get on the night schedule and stuff like that. But traveling with the guys and being at home for a week and then going on the road and going out to dinners when you land somewhere with, we go with the bullpen, or sometimes you go with a team, or just maybe some of your friends on the team. But that's the kind of stuff that I miss more than pitching per se. I work kind of at a couple of different high schools, and the local guys here, can I get in at bat? And I'm like, well, I'm not really in shape, so I'll see if I can throw for 2 or 3 weeks, get in shape a little bit. But and then reality hits, and you're definitely getting older.
No, for sure. And I think you could put that on a t-shirt, Randy. My wife hates Valentine's Day.
Yeah, she would every year it'd be just like she's like, oh, this is so stupid, it'd just be really funny because get home from the season and people start their countdown, still spring training, you see on like social media and stuff, and she'd always get so frustrated. She's like, they just got home. Can you not do a countdown to when they leave? And so that was always kind of the joke around our house. But yeah, Valentine's Day was not able to celebrate together that too often.
Well, hopefully it's a little bit different now. And you're a guy uh, who again I mentioned, it's not like you're too far removed from playing, but some things have changed. Do you still watch baseball today? Are you still someone that's kind of locked in on the day to day, understanding, what teams are good? Maybe you still have guys that you played with and against that are still in the league that you keep up with. Do you still watch the game?
Yeah, I still keep up with it. I don't necessarily do it on a day-to-day basis. I don't do like fantasy baseball or any of that kind of stuff. But I'll pay attention, see who's good, who's not. Like World Series came around, and Andrew Freeman was hugely important to my career, or I feel like he was giving me really kind of a second chance there in Tampa when he was the GM there. So the Dodgers, keep it because of him, and I played there for a short little bit. But they're playing the Yankees, which is Giancarlo, which is the first team. So stuff like that. Of course, you're going to pay attention to the World Series, but to say I'm locked in on a day-to-day basis, no. But obviously, I watch Sports Center, and I really enjoy watching live sports. So if there's not a whole lot else on, or my wife can't talk me into watching some TV show, I'll usually have baseball, in the background. But I wouldn't say like I buy this, get the subscription and lock into every single game. But I definitely pay attention.
No, that's awesome, and I want to touch on that. So you remember Giancarlo Stanton when he was Mike Stanton?
Yeah, actually, his first year when he was with the Marlins, he came in and I was playing for Tampa, and that's when he was a rookie and the sensation and all this, and I was a left-handed specialist, and Joe called down and got me up because I can't remember who was in the game, but they were basically getting close to their pitch count for that, and they didn't want to use him too much more, and then they called back down. They're like, okay, if he doesn't get this guy out, you're coming to face Stanton, and I'm like, really? That's not like the best matchup. I wasn't scared by any means, but it's not necessarily the matchup I'm looking forward to. Turn him around left-handed all day long. So, but yeah, I remember that when he was a rookie. I remember actually, I think it was on my 10-year, the day of my 10 years in the big leagues. I faced him in the ninth inning. Faced him once in the ninth inning, and I faced him. And first one I threw wide into the backstop, and Tony Cruz looked up at him and goes, "I don't think he wants to face you." And I ended up giving him one, and he just got under it, and I thought it was a home run to right center, and I'm walking, asking the umpire for another ball, give it to me, and I can't even remember. It was probably John Jay in right center, catches the ball, throws it back in, and then all of a sudden there are two balls in the infield, and I'm like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Oh, he didn't hit it out." And I thought for sure way gone when he hit it. I thought it was out of here, but guys like that I'll keep up with because G was just so awesome. He's just a really awesome human being. He was always so humble and he was always great. And so guys like that I remember that I play with, but those are getting fewer and fewer. A lot of them are becoming coaches, like Danny D. Descalso's a coach. John Jay's a coach. There's just all kinds of coaches out there. So I'll pull for those guys and coaches, but it's not the same as pulling for players per se. But yeah, watch out and look out there and see who's still going at it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Descalzo and Madden have both been on this podcast, so
Oh,
you're
well,
in,
that's great. Yeah,
yeah,
those two wonderful individuals.
yeah, no, for sure. Descalzo was in the front office with the Arizona Diamondbacks organization, and I was supposed to have him the day after the Diamondbacks lost the World Series to the Astros.
Oh,
And it just was not a great not a great timing situation there.
yeah,
So
that's a tough one to come on and do a podcast after a tough loss like that can be hard to swallow. You got to try to put that grin on your face and go about it as normal. But the first day or two after is really tough.
yeah, no, for sure. But he was really cool about it. And good guy. Good to see him as as part of the coaching staff for St. Louis as well. Let's get into kind of to your career a little bit. San Antonio guy, grew up in the San Antonio area, went to FSU. What's the story on kind of how you got involved in baseball? When did that start becoming a passion?
Oof, I played t-ball and then I took a big break in between there and really didn't play again until I was like, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. So probably a good 5 year break. Just got back into it at the little league level and it kind of caught fire then. Once I got to be a freshman in high school, I played basketball, which is what I had mainly played growing up. And I went out for varsity tryouts and they came back and kind of were like, hey, do you want to practice with the varsity? Because they had a period that you practiced, or do you want to stay in the JV basketball stuff? And I, went home, talked to my dad, and I'm like, I'm 6'1" and I can't dunk. Maybe I should be realistic about what avenue I should take, and baseball was just really it started to take a big interest for me. And at that time, and then go play varsity and then went to Florida State, went to Pepperdine and I went to Florida State 2 summer camps before my senior year. And I remember throwing a 3-2 breaking ball, struck a kid out. And the guy who's he's now a coach at FAMU, but he was the pitching coach at the time, Jamie Shoup, turned to me and said, if you can throw a 3-2 breaking ball, you can play here at Florida State. And that took it off for me. I was like, what? I could play here. I was just having the best time at that camp. And so that's kind of how I got recruited there. And, I got to go play and, I had guys like Jonathan Johnson. He really kind of took me under his wing when I was there, and he ended up being a first round pick for the Rangers. And there's just a lot of good guys there. And he took me under his wing that first year. And then I went up to the Northwest League and played for the Tacoma Rainiers with Matt Woodward. He was my roommate, and his dad was Woody Woodward, who was a longtime GM. And I got to get a lot of baseball knowledge there and really spend the whole summer with the two of them and got to pitch a lot, and that really helped kind of propel me to having more success. And then got drafted by the Yankees, and kind of same thing. They tried to put my arm up top, and then they told me to throw how I was comfortable, so I started dropping down on the side. And I went to the fall league after my first year of being a reliever, and it made a huge difference for me kind of figuring out, okay, you can't just throw breaking balls out of the zone. These AA, AAA, really good hitters are not going to do what A-ball hitters were doing at the time. They just didn't have the same at-bats. And so that was a huge help for me. And then, the next year went into spring training and skipped AA, went to AAA, and then got called up at the end of June. So it was just – it all kind of happened fast. It's amazing looking back on your memory that you can kind of explain it there in 2 or 3 minutes. That's really the short version of it, but that's pretty much all the facts of how it took off. And I just once I kind of got asked to be on varsity baseball, or at least varsity baseball practice my freshman year, that's really kind of where it took off for me.
No, that's awesome. And I want to ask about those Yankees teams. And, you had the chance of, being drafted by the Yankees right smack in the middle of that kind of 1990s dynasty run. And your first year, you won the ring with them in 2000, kind of in the start of, your first year in the big leagues. And as a young player, how valuable is that experience playing with a team of that caliber that wins a championship and kind of experiencing that success right off the bat?
Well, walking into that clubhouse can be pretty intimidating with the names that were out there, obviously, right? Jeter, Mariano, I mean, it's too many to list, Paulie, O'Neill, I remember my first appearance in Yankee Stadium. If it wasn't my first, it was my second. And I felt I had a good one, and I came and I sat down in the seat, and I'll never forget Chuck Knobloch, and Jeter and Scott and Brocious all came over there like, hey, you don't want to sit there. Paulie just made an out, and that's a seat you need. And I was like, oh, I didn't know. I didn't watch any of that stuff on TV. I was just having a great time in AAA and just fortunate to get called up. So I didn't know those kind of little secrets, but it's intimidating from the fact that they had so much success. And you just want to fit in like a piece of the puzzle. Something else that obviously helped is Mariano Rivera was my first catch partner in the big leagues. So he kind of I'd say take me under my wing. He'd kind of treat me like a rookie. He'd be like, okay, go ahead, get down, and I'd go to catch him, and he'd kind of like try to short hop it, see if I could pick it, and kind of teasing me. And if I missed it, he'd kind of nick me on the shins, and he always got a true laugh out of that because then he'd be like, oh, Mike Stanton, the left-handed reliever, Mike Stanton, he'd get down, he'd just pop it, and Mo could put it wherever he wanted, and so he kind of broke me in with if you it's not hazing, but light teasing, hazing like that, where it was like, oh, he's just trying to skim skim my shin bone. But Nelly, um he was great. He had, somewhat of the same arm angle. He had a big sweeping slider. And so after he teased you a little bit about being a rookie, he was great about sitting down and really kind of going through and showing me how he threw his slider and the way he approached that bats, definitely against right-handers. And so with that wealth of knowledge and that all those veterans, coming in being young, it was kind of, just make sure you come in, you keep your, the ways of the time then where, you come in, keep your mouth closed, do your work and, kind of be seen, not heard. And so, I tried to do that the best I could. And I think I carried a pretty darn good candy bag and to keep those guys down in the bullpen fed and try to just soak up as much knowledge as I could.
Do you have any fun stories from those early Yankee teams? Because like you mentioned, you kind of touched on it a little bit with O'Neill and Jeter and Rivera. They're kind of loaded with a bunch of characters.
Yeah, like I said, I kind of just try to stay in the backdrop. There were all kinds of games that were played. It was more like you played silly games in the bullpen. Like if you ever pointed, you had to grab your ear, or else they could like tap you on the head. Well, they weren't quite taps, but it was just funny. So forever, I would always point with two fingers. It was just kind of silly stuff like that. Nothing hardcore, nothing crazy. The what I really remember most is coming in on my second appearance in Tampa, and I came in and threw it, and somebody hit it back at me, and I kind of missed it because I thought they had hit it harder, and they missed it, and it nicked off my glove and kind of went, and Jeter couldn't make the play just because it was a tough play, fast runner. And so then they were coming in. I had gotten two outs. Somebody came in. Somebody was coming in behind me. I think it was Nelly. But they all met at the mound, and Brocious came up and he goes, hey, a change up there. I thought he said you threw a change up. I said, no, 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 I threw him a slider. I don't. And so then I went into the dugout, and then the whole infield came in, and it was mind you, it was my second appearance, and I'm a young kid, and these other guys, and they just got the biggest kick out of that. They retold the story, like pulled a bunch of people in. And everybody had a good laugh. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I threw a slider. I thought that's what you meant." He's like, "No, I meant they hit you a changeup. They didn't hit it as hard as you thought." So, I mean, and that was my second. So, stuff like that just really sticks with you. It's stuff that you don't forget. And even when I don't tell that story too often, it's just like right there, pretty immediate. Even though it's been what, like you said, 10 years since I retired, and that was, I don't know, 25 years ago. Now that I think on it. That was 25 years ago. So, that was a while ago, but it seems like it was just yesterday.
Awesome. And you were considered, of course, the left-handed specialist. And there's the term, is it LOOGY or LOOGY?
Loogie,
LOOGY.
Sweeney Murray and a couple other reporters, but Sweeney Murray would he's like, you're the loogiest of all loogies, man.
Yeah, the LOOGY King is another
as
one.
I got older, we've stayed in touch and we were friends. And the farther I got away from the Yankees, really when I got into playing for the Rays and Joe and Andrew, they really turned me into that. And so Sweeney would be like, well, you're fulfilling your dream of being a loogie, because I had always said that's what I want to do. I want to come get that tough hitter out, and then I want to just go ahead and take a seat.
Did you like that role at all?
Oh, I loved it. I
You
loved
loved
it.
it?
Yeah, nothing better than coming in, two outs, first and second. You're in, I mean, that's like the most pressure, or bases loaded. I came in plenty of times with bases loaded, and you got to get that one out. And yeah, I mean, the days that you don't do it, it stinks. As long as you make those few and far between. But I remember my first appearance in Busch Stadium as a Cardinal, uh, my first appearance there, and I came in to face Votto, and the first and second, two outs, and we were down 3-2. So you're supposed to keep the game right there, right? And I get him three, ball one, ball two, ball three, and you're like, oh, and the crowd's getting a little restless. And I throw a 3-0 two-seam fastball in under his hands. He hits a ground ball to second base and get out of the inning. And it's just like and then it was like, okay, your day's done. See ya. Longoria would always give me the hardest time of all the guys. He'd come in I'd come in Tampa. I did it so many times in Tampa. I was just fortunate, but I'd come in, get my one guy, and I always like to get the ball from the third baseman. And I told him that, so he knows it. But you get that guy out, and Longo would go, and like when he's going to come to throw it, and he go like he's throwing it to me, and then he put it back in his glove, and he just get the biggest smile on his face and just laugh. And he's like, "Man, you got the best job in the world." And I was like, "Hey, you're the one who wants to play all the time." But you get that out, and he comes, and I'd call it the Longo walk, and then give the ball to Joe, and I'd walk inside and wait till that inning was finished, and then go watch the rest in the clubhouse. So not much better than that.
Yeah, no, not much better than that. And we'll kind of I'll kind of ask you about the three batter minimum in just a second, but in that time period, kind of, in the era in which you played, that was a pretty big position for managers to turn to relievers and say, hey, get this one guy, especially, in both leagues. There's some scary left-handed bats that would
Right.
come up. I know in the National League, you had the Ryan Howards, you mentioned Votto. In the American League, you would have the David Ortizes. There's a bunch of big, scary left-handed hitters. And, I remember the one that Adam LaRoche was always a big one that they brought in the left-handed specialist for.
Mhm.
How important in that specific time frame was the left-handed specialist? Because I feel like we don't really remember it the way we should.
Well, I mean, it was just that error. What people ask when I played, and it was I just played in the perfect time error for what I was capable to do. I think maybe if I was playing these days with the 3-out minimum, obviously I would work harder at developing, say, that change up to really give myself to be in the game. But at that time, I didn't have to focus, and everybody be like, hey, if you're facing a righty, it's not really like we're that worried about it. Or, Joe would do it a lot. I'd face a lefty. He'd walk the right. If I had a guy on second and one out, I come in and get that first, hopefully get that first guy out, intentionally walk the second dude. And I have two outs and get that lefty out for the third. Notorious for doing that with me. But at that time and that time of baseball, it was just perfect. And that's where I landed. And the names you brought up, or say like a Chase Utley, or Ibanez, that's one of the reasons Miami had signed me. They told me it's because those guys were hitting 2, 3, 4, and I was like, if you could keep that together and I could face three, it's like, oh, I could throw a whole inning, and that was like a big deal. Um, but yeah, that's what I was saying. That's the competition. That's why I love the role is because most times you weren't coming in to face, say, a lefty that was hitting an 8, 9 hole. Those are the guys they would pinch hit for. But you come in and face a Harper, they're not pinch hitting for him, right? They're not taking that guy out. So it's you versus some of the, if not the best hitters, or at least left-handed hitters of the time. And that's why I said that about G. Right-handed, but if you put him left-handed, I had the confidence. I had just done it enough. It doesn't mean I got him out every time or any of that. It was just that I felt that I was capable, and I had the confidence, especially given to me by, like I said, kind of Joe and Andrew putting me in those spots, Joe specifically putting me in those spots to be successful. And even the times that I wasn't successful, he put me right back in there the next day. And that made a huge difference for my career and made me love facing those left-handed batters even more, and kind of where I would say grew up as a player and really got the confidence who was able to finish, I feel successfully, the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years of playing.
And was there ever like a text chain of like Ripchinski's in there and like Javi Lopez? Because Javi Lopez, he's the one in San Francisco that Giants fans love, and he was great at it. Was there ever like a chance to connect with the other ones during the course of your career?
Well, Zepp and I played together with the Cardinals
That's
before he
right.
left. And Javi and I actually played together in the Diamondbacks with the Diamondbacks. So we knew each other, but we didn't have a text chain going or anything at the time. But Javi went out there. Javi was probably one of the best athletes that I ever played with. I remember playing in Tucson, and I mean, he could get a football and he'd be like, okay, so you're trying to get your running in. And Javi, okay, you don't have to run. You just throw. And he'd throw 70-yard pass, like literally 70-yard passes. You'd go out there and he'd just like keep going. And he just and flick it, and he would throw it overhand and flick it like that, and it was just impressive to see. And he was just truly a gifted athlete, and he was hilarious. And both those guys were really good teammates. It's more when you're in the moment. Me and Zep. Oh man, when we were playing with the Cardinals, you didn't even have to have a text going. You just sit there and you let Zep talk, and you'd be like, "Really? That's right." And he was just funny, and just some of the things he'd say, and you'd be okay, yeah. See, this is why left-handers get this name, but always good times. But both those guys, I was fortunate to play with them, and you know, uh, they were just great teammates.
It is, I mean, every lefty, I played 4 years of high school baseball in the Bay Area, and like, I mean, every lefty that I come across was just so weird. Like, is that just a thing where it's like lefties, like there's something like they're special. There's something there's
Uh,
something
we,
about them.
we like to think so. I mean, as far as I say it all the time, everybody's born right-handed, but the greatest overcome it. It's just, you deal with everything, from growing up, and you cutting with the wrong scissors. You're trying to cut, and there's only one pair of red ones, and everybody else has green ones. So I just learned how to cut right-handed, but yeah, everything's like so difficult, and or just challenging. I wouldn't say difficult, because it's made for a right-handed world, and I think you just kind of take that attitude on and kind of do what you want. And obviously, you're left-handed, so you're a little different from the start, and it's kind of like a badge of pride to kind of be different. And I think if you ask a lot of my former teammates, they'd be like, "Yeah, he's one of a kind." I was loud, very talkative, and I was just always into harmless, good times, having fun. And maybe not in those Yankee days, but definitely as I got older, I have a saying, it's holler. I actually have it on my cup, holler. Like all my guys would know me say that. I would come in and just scream it, and they'd be like, "What are you screaming for?" I'm like, "I don't know, just holler." It's kind of like saying hello, and I'd say holler when I'd leave, and all that kind of stuff. David Price, first time I came in with the Marlins, he was down warming up. I came out to talk to Joe, and he's down the right field line. He's like, holler. And so people just kind of call me that. And it was just like that's just what lefties do, just silly stuff. And try to keep the game light, try to have a good time. Like they say, you're playing a game for a living. You don't want to take yourself too seriously. So, and there's always got to be that guy. And left-handed, who better than a left-handed specialist who comes in, faces one or two guys to try to lighten the mood for guys who do have to take it serious for 9 innings, and they have to be a little bit more locked in than you do. You can be relaxed, and if you can give that moment of laughter or be that kind of craziness in their day, why not?
No, absolutely. And when you eventually knew that like your role was going to be a lefty specialist, like when you would sign a contract and they're like, okay, you're going to be our lefty specialist, and you kind of got in that mentality and you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do probably for the rest of my career. How did you mentally prepare for that compared to maybe earlier in your career when you were, facing a lot of right-handed hitters too? Was there like a change in mentality that, going into spring training, okay, I'm going to lock in at this one particular thing?
Well, yeah, definitely that second year in Tampa, was kind of when it, because I was never really comfortable. I was like, oh, I got to have the best spring trainings or do whatever just to make a club. And then that year, they sat me down there in the meeting, and they were like, "Look, you're gonna be on the team, but we'd really like you to work on your changeup. Don't worry about your ERA. Don't worry about anything. We want you to see if you can develop that a little bit." And the hardest part is actually doing that, because then they put you in a game, and it's like, okay, you're supposed to be throwing that, and then you give up a bomb, or you give up a doubles roped off because you leave it up there. Um, it's hard to make that adjustment and not go back to what you did, like, oh, I got to be perfect to make the team. And eventually they said, look, just don't worry about it, just can that, get ready for the season. Like the last week or two, they're like, okay, now really work on what you need to work on to get yourself prepared for a season. And going further, it got a little less, more so to the point where I was like, do I really need to hit BP? Because I did not like hitting in the cage. I didn't like bunting, didn't like any of that. I'm like, if I'm up there, I'm pretty sure you guys don't care if I get a hit or get a bunt down. So I would do, some of my regular, bunt work to get that down. But taking swings after I'd hurt myself in spring training, the Marlins are like, nope, you don't have to do that anymore. as far as they were concerned. The Cardinals made me do it. The Matheny and Lilly would make me do it a little bit, and then kind of like my last 2 years, they were like, they
Yeah,
weren't as
right before we got on here, I watched the video of you drawing a walk.
yeah, that's a infamous one where it's and he's right. I was more scared. I was crying because I was more scared of running the bases just because I'm like, are we serious right now? I mean, I was laughing, but I was definitely very nervous about having to run the bases. And if you look at where I'm standing in the box, that's what everybody makes fun of. And Jerry Blevins actually came up to me the next day, and I can't remember who was pitching to me, but he said Jerry said he thought you were messing with him because you were standing so far back. So he's having a hard time just throwing it down the middle because he's like, "What's this guy doing?" And if you look, it's the same exact spot I stood when I faced Randy Johnson in the World Series. I'm in the back right corner. I'm scared to death. I got a 3/4, sidearm lefty coming at me, and Randy. And then even when I got to that, but it's great that there's a clip of that now. The World Series one's a lot harder to find, but I still get a kick out of that and seeing all the guys in the bullpen, put the thing that was like, oh, that means you had a good eye, taking a walk. And, they panned a Lackey and Holiday and Carp in the dugout, just laughing that I got on base. And I was just more worried, like, please don't hit me when it was coming in there.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it now. You might have been in the dugout because again, a lot of Giants fans listen to this podcast. You might have been in the dugout when Santiago Casilla had the at bat in Florida when he stood very far away from the plate and he drew a 4-pitch walk. I don't know
Oh,
if you,
no,
I don't know if you
I
remember.
don't
Yeah,
recall it if I, if I was there, but,
I'll have to shoot you the video, but it was in
okay.
2011, and it was very interesting. Some people might know what I'm talking about, but it's very specific, so I didn't expect you to remember. But every time I think of relief pitchers hitting is fun. You don't see it anymore, but when it does happen every now and then, it's very interesting to see.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's it's definitely going to be fewer. Will you probably never see it again unless there's just a pitcher who can really hit. But boy, that's one rule I could have done without when I was playing. If they'd have just taken that out, we would have never had to hit BP, never had to work in the cage. I'd have been perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would understand that absolutely. All right, 3 batter minimum. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Is it just kind of whatever?
I think what gets frustrating for me at all, and I say this pretty much on any interview or podcast I've done, is that all the rules seem to be changed to help the hitter.
Every single one.
And I get it. It's offense. I get it. But it's frustrating. For me, it's like, okay, if you're going to make that rule, then make the rule, okay, it's a 3 batter minimum, but whoever comes in, you can't pinch hit for that hitter for the first hitter. So if I come in and I face, the 8-hole hitter that happens to be left-handed, you can't pinch hit for him, and they'll never do that. I get it. But I don't mind it. That's the way the game changes. It evolves. It goes. I mean, most of these guys are throwing 95 plus. So, it's not like me who was throwing, 87 to 89 and, a little two seam, with the exception of a few, obviously, one's there in San Francisco and he gets everybody out. So it doesn't matter. But, I just that it's always constantly changed to give the hitter the advantage is what I get more frustrated about than the 3 batter minimum. I mean, like I said, I'm glad I played in the time era that I did. It was perfect for me. I definitely would have worked harder to have more pitches available to get more hitters out so that I could stay in games and be in the big leagues and not necessarily have been the loogie of all loogie or one of the loogies of all loogies or whatever, just a totally left-handed guy. But like I said before, that's the way I didn't have to do it then. That's the way these guys deal with it now. But even Hill's coming in and throwing 94, 95 from the side. I can't imagine that. I always like, oh man, I'd love to be able to throw 95 one day. And I had to rely on movement and location and switching it up. And some of these guys can just reach back and blow up by these guys. So with their ability to do that, they got to change the rules to make it, and they also want, the time of the game and not so many changes of pitchers and all that. So I understand why it happens, but here again, like I said, the most frustrating part is just that it always seems to advantage the hitter. And that's the part that I don't like about it.
Yeah, you're spot on with every rule in the history of baseball that has been, I guess modern has been to benefit the hitter. I mean, you look at the shift, the throw over rule with the bigger bases,
Right.
the designated hitter in the 70s when that was introduced. I think one year in the 60s they had such a good year on the mound that they lowered the mound.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
every single rule in the history of baseball has been to benefit the the hitter.
Well,
And
don't tell them I said this, but I mean, obviously, hitting's probably one of, if not the hardest thing in
very
all sports to
difficult.
do. So I get that. That most of the rules would be changed to that. It would just be nice to see maybe one rule change that would advantage the pitcher. Um, but hitting's tough, and especially when you get into this time era in today's game, it's not like playing back in the 50s and 60s where people want to go to the park and be like they it's kind of instant gratification and they want the speed of the game. You're trying to keep people involved, and you want it to be quicker paced and more scoring and more runs. And I was never a fan of the shift personally. A lot of times I would ask whoever was in charge of that or the manager, like, hey, don't shift for me. I found they a lot of left-handed hitters don't approach me, say, the same as a Kevin Seagrist. Siegs could reach back and throw 95, 96, 97, whatever. And so the at bats are taking off him versus me trying to throw a 88, 89 mile an hour two seamer in, or trying to stay off that, more of a sweeping slider. The approach isn't the same. And I spoke to a lot of hitters when I played, and they're like, no, we absolutely don't take the same at bat off you or Javi as we do, say a Seagrist. And so the shift, I was a fan that they changed that to not being able to overshift personally. But I was also gone when that really happened. I was gone then too. But I was like, that was kind of one just for my heart, because I was like, I didn't like the shift, and people are like, what are you talking about? Look at all the numbers lay out. And I'm like, yeah, everybody points out when the shift works, but they don't ever point out when it doesn't work. Commentators, any of that kind of stuff. And so I was always an anti-shift guy.
Yeah, no, I never understood, like a guy on first, nobody out, and we have the overshift. It's like, why wouldn't we want to, try for two here? And then, if you do, you have the third baseman covering second, and you're discombobulated in every way. But and then there's a lot of pitchers that pitched away from the shift. I remember watching Johnny Cueto, like, a big left-handed hitter was at the plate. They had the, overshift on. Second baseman was in shallow right field, and Cueto's throwing changeups low and away to the lefty. It's
Right.
like, what are we doing? Like, we're not even
Right, right.
pitching into the shift. So,
Well, here again, I didn't get to face that many righties, but that's the time I would. You want to overshift and shift everybody over to that side of the field, sure, because I had plenty of balls that they would pull right in between third and short all the time. Right-handed hitters, But like I said, most of the time when I was facing a right-handed hitter, it was, with an out, nobody on, or it wasn't like I was, in there necessarily with second and third,
high
and
leverage.
and that really high leverage. They'd usually bring somebody in, or they'd, try to pitch around it, or and then give me to that lefty, and then face Howard with the bases loaded, and so I didn't have to do that, but I would have been fine shifting that way. I didn't like it on the lefties, and that's mainly obviously what I faced. So I would get frustrated because if they just take that slider, or if I threw a two seamer away and they take it and poke it in that hole to short, I would be like, oh, that was right where the shortstop should have been. Why is he standing over the back of second base? And they're like, well, that's what the numbers lie. And I'm like, well, show me the numbers for me. And I would use Javi a lot when they would ask why. I'd use Javi a lot and say, okay, if you have all these spray charts, show me left-handed hitters against me and Javi Lopez, and show me where those are, and then shift accordingly. And I've got no problem with that. Even though our styles were a little different, Javi threw a little harder than I did. I mean, he wasn't blowing 98 or anything, but he threw a little harder than I did. But it was a lot the same. It was a lot the same angle. I relied a little bit more on, like I said, on movement and really getting a two seamer down and in than Javi did. He could just go back and forth. But if they showed me those numbers, then I'm more than happy to be fine with shifting.
Yeah, no, somebody's got to do like a sit down with you and Javi and discuss just everything like that. That
Yeah,
would be actually sick if somebody could organize that. That would be really cool.
it's been a
And by the way, I have a rule. I have the rule that I think would benefit pitchers that you're thinking. I think you just allow them, to mix with rosin, mix something like do the sunscreen with rosin mix and allow that,
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the
give them
sunscreen
something.
sunscreen on your forearm. For me, I wanted to see it like that. I wouldn't have used it. I chewed my gum, but I didn't ever use because I always licked my fingers, so I didn't want to taste the rosin. I didn't want to taste any sunscreen. The tacky. I didn't get anything from that. Um, I think why you would allow that at on some level, if you did at all, is just because these guys are throwing hard. It gets in the middle of the summer and that ball gets slick, especially if they don't rub it up real good, and that ball gets slick and you've got 99, 100. I mean, I would think that hitters would want guys to know where that's going. And sometimes it is an accident because I can tell you right now, I never try to throw up. If you were going in and if you were going even in for a purpose, but back then when you could do it, it was always rib cage and below. I never threw hard enough that would really make a difference and hurt anybody. They kind of catch it and laugh and whatever. But these guys throwing 98, 99 now, they want to know where that's going. So I know they won't ever let them put anything on the ball, but if there was anything, I don't know, because then how would you regulate it? But that would definitely be it. I think some of those guys need it just so that they control where it's going, not necessarily to get more spin rate.
Yeah, and for health reasons too. I mean, guys are throwing hard enough to where they're risking health with every pitch regardless. But at the same time, you don't want anybody gripping the ball tighter, because then you put some pressure on your forearm, and then
Yeah.
we know what
And there's
forearm
plenty,
leads
yeah, there's
to.
plenty of injuries today that that's only going to cause it more and more. You're right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And um, I do want to ask about the vibe in the bullpen over the course of the game. Like you kind of touched on it. There's some fun conversations that happen in there, and I always thought that it was like, because again, I'm localizing some things here. San Francisco didn't have the bullpen. I don't think you ever experienced the bullpen in center fielder in center field in San Francisco because that's a new thing.
Right.
So I'm used to relievers still being in the dugout or maybe being in a room kind of just below the steps, kind of in like the batting cage area. Uh, did you like those, the Wrigley Fields, the Oracle Parks? Did you like sitting in the dugout? Did you like being in the bullpen? Because it kind of seems like you're just away from everybody. I mean, some guys might like that, but what's the vibe in the bullpen?
Well, Wrigley, depending on what time of year you went there, absolutely not, because it'd be freezing. You'd have to use your personal little heater, and you just got that little bench. And then nonetheless, you're throwing on the field, which and at Oracle, which can be stressful enough. But Wrigley, it's even tighter. Um, you enjoyed it for I think bullpen guys probably enjoyed it more than the position players, because then it's all of a sudden like who are these guys crowding our space? Well, and you just try to stay out of the way. I love going to Oracle and being in the dugout because one, it was warmer. Two, you didn't have to listen to the fans get on you. And three, you could always run down the steps and go up, and they always had hot chocolate available and it's. And I'd always have an it's before a game. And that's the one place you'd get them and love it. And you'd be in there and you could kind of quick access to the clubhouse, and it was definitely warmer. So for that, I liked it. It's different because you do have your routine, like, just depending, and it's changed a little bit now because relievers will start coming in the fourth, say. But back then, you didn't necessarily come in as early, for the most part, unless it was just like an emergency. So the first two or three innings would be pretty relaxed, and just kind of watching the game and kind of getting a feel for what's going on. And then when the fourth hit is kind of, at least for me and a lot of guys, but fourth, fifth inning, depending on what your role was, is when you really kind of start locking in. If you were the long guy, you needed to kind of start locking in before that. And then, say as the fifth, sixth inning came, I would start counting hitters. Okay, what situation, so that I could be mentally prepared. Like, okay, Howard, how many? He's six hitters away. Okay, so and then you watch the game accordingly, knowing that depending on the score and whatnot. Okay, got out of it. He's going to be the third hitter next inning. We're up by one. This is seventh inning. they're going to call at the beginning of that inning. So it becomes a routine. And that's why I said I like the routine. It becomes a routine. And then it just depends. If it got to, like, say, the times in St. Louis, if it was Mujica or Nishak went in or something like that, and you kind of know, then you kind of you shut down a little bit. You can't totally shut it off in case they come back. But if at least for me, if I knew my role had kind of passed and it was getting to where it's going to be, Rosie was in there, they're not going to pull Rosie for me unless it's an emergency where he gave it up, which rarely happened. So that was the fun part about the bullpen, is you could kind of relax and get kind of into the flow of the game in the first couple of innings and kind of have your conversations. And then, really about that middle of the game, about the fifth inning, you kind of start to lock in. And then once years pass and once that goes, and then you kind of shut down again. But you always had the chance, or at least for me and my role, I always had the chance to pitch. That's why I loved doing what I did once they switched me to that, because I used to be a starter very shortly, briefly. But, you pitch, you have a bad where you only go 2 2/3, you had to sit on that for 4 or 5 days, right? If you went out and you gave up that hit and let a run score or whatever, well, the next day you're right back out there, or at least you have the chance. So it really helped me, because I'd say I'm pretty ADHD, and I just needed that, and I needed the routine so that I could kind of focus on that and then get in there, have a good outing, and forget about the next day. Like they say, have the shortest memory, yada, yada, yada. But it just made it way more fun because you were playing almost, I wouldn't say an everyday player, but the year Joe threw me in there most, I had 85 appearances. There was probably at least 30 times that I would have gotten warm and didn't get in a game. So of 162, that's quite a few games where you're gonna you were in the game or available to be in the game or going, potentially going to be in the game. So,
And that's called a dry hump, right?
Well, I say, yeah. If you got to, if you got
Dry hump.
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. I had me and Wheeler standing right next to each other in Tampa. We had plenty of those, so we warmed up together a lot, and it was either me or him going in, and the other guy would basically get, if they went out there and did their job, which he did a lot of times, and I was fortunate to do a number of times. The other guy got dry hump to be like, oh, thanks a lot. There's another one, but it was always fun.
And for those that are wondering why I'm just screaming dry humped, it's because when you warm up and don't come into a game, that's called, you dry humped. So, or got dry. I don't know exactly the terminology, but yeah,
That's the correct term.
it's an amazing term. I love it. Uh, how many throws did it take you in the bullpen? Like, when did you know? Did it depend on the weather? Did it depend? I know you said you're monitoring the lineup and who's up. Uh, how many throws did it usually take you to kind of be ready to go in and take your warm up throws on the mound,
Well,
on the big league mound?
I always said I could be ready. You could just put me in, and I would have got the 7 out there. I always wanted that test, like the time that Mattingly walked out there and turned around, then had to go back. And I think Joe Beimel came out. Beimel, I think that's how you said his last name, and he had to come out basically not having thrown. I always wanted that challenge because I always felt like I could do it. It really took me 2 or 3 throws. I'd do a big circle with my arm, kind of like loosen it up, and then I'd, get the bullpen catcher down, and I'd stay in front of the mound. I'd throw one pretty good right there, and I'd go halfway up another one and get on, and then get onto the rubber and just kind of like let three let them loose fastballs, and I could probably have been ready to go in the game. The rest after that's really kind of spotting up, kind of getting your location. I was just fortunate. I had a pretty resilient arm, they call it a rubber arm. It didn't take a whole lot for it to get high. I mean, I also wasn't throwing, 95 plus, right? I was throwing in the upper 80s. So if I came in and threw one at 86, that wasn't that far off. And it wasn't like I needed to get my whole body going, as say, at a great friend, still a friend to this day, a team I play with. It would take Dunner a little bit longer than me, but that's because Mike Dunn, he threw a lot harder than me, right? And so it'd take him, a few more throws than me, whereas I'd kind of do that, and he'd look at me and be like, I don't know how you do that, and I'm like, well, I don't know how you throw 97. So, I think the fact that I didn't throw as hard made it a little bit easier for me to get warm. But like I said, I always wanted that challenge to go in. I never got to do it. I wanted that, and I wanted one start in the big leagues. It's just that inning, and now they have openers.
You would have done it, yeah.
Guy. If they'd had 3 lefties, I'd have been like the perfect guy, and then throw my one inning, and then I get the rest of the game off. there's probably a reason a lot of my managers wouldn't have done that, but they'd be like, I don't know if we can handle this guy in here. No, we need to save him towards the end.
Yeah. I see a trend in your thinking. It's like, oh, I get to do this and then sit down. It's
Oh
like,
yeah, and being in
yeah,
it, like kicking, just taking a big league baseball game after that. I mean, like who
yeah,
wouldn't do that? That's yeah, it's a fun atmosphere. It's a great place to work. Obviously, so many people dream of doing it. So few are fortunate to be able to do it. That when you look back, you got to realize how lucky you are to have done that. A lot of kids that I run into these days, biggest deal. And I'd always say to my wife, I'm like, it's just what I did. Like, I just did that. It wasn't a big deal to me. And, obviously I'm no Derek Jeter or Evan Longoria or any of those names. But I was able to play for quite a long time. And so a lot of people look at that as a big deal. And that's just not who I am. I never introduce myself and say, hey, I'm, Randy Choate. And I played baseball for 20 years and 11 something in big leagues. That's not, it's what I did. It's not who I am. And so I never want to the attention of that kind of sometimes makes me shy. And a lot of people will probably laugh at that because they know I'm not a shy person, but I just don't. I love sitting like this and telling stories or sit around with my buddies. If a good story comes to mind when we're all talking, I love to talk about it. Or if kids ask, I'm more than willing to tell hour-long stories or whatever. I can all my experiences. I have no problem with that. I just don't usually offer it up because I'm just a little bit more kind of like reserved about it than most. But once they find out and they start asking the questions, they just, what's it like to play with Derek Jeter? And it's just, yeah, well, he's the incredible human that he seems to be. He's a super nice guy, and I love being able to tell that kind of stuff. To have played with those kind of guys, and I don't really have any one player who they'd be like, "How's he play?" Oh no, he's a bad dude. I don't really have that. I was fortunate. I played with a lot of great teammates, even the superstars. Everybody has their bad moments, but they were always all great teammates. And you never know what kind of day somebody's going through. So whatever, okay, he's having a bad day, and then the next day, they're wonderful, or they're frustrated if they didn't have a good day at the field, but they were always genuine, always had your back. I didn't have, I don't feel like I had any teammates that wouldn't have my back, nor I them. I'd be there for any one of those guys that I was fortunate enough to play for
no,
or with.
absolutely. And a few more things before we wrap, because I know I kept you for way too long, but now you're saying that you like telling these stories, so okay, maybe another 3 hours, right? No,
Okay.
just kidding. Um, uh, I think, this is going to be a non-serious question at all, but if you're the last one out there to a brawl, like, from the bullpen to a brawl, do
Hmm.
you get a hard time about that? Like, is there legitimately a competition? Because I mean, I guess it doesn't matter anyways. Because by the time the bullpen guys get down there, it's done with anyways, and it's kind of just like a waste of energy and whatever. But is there something to that when there's a fight and like someone either didn't go or the last one there?
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely didn't. It wasn't about not being the last one. It was more showing that you would have their back. And like I said before, a lot of my teammates know me for the guy I was and the happy-go-lucky guy. I would definitely say I'm more of a lover than a fighter. But if I had to get in there and it was for, I'd get in there even if I had to wear it to get somebody off somebody else. But I'm not necessarily the Jason Grimsley who could get in there and tear somebody up. I mean, that dude was tough, right? Um,
Kyle
so
Farnsworth. I
it
watched
it
that
was
video recently.
yeah, or Farnsworth. Any of those dudes are just like willing to just throw the guy for Cincinnati who took on the whole dugout or whatever. Yeah, I mean that dude obviously can scrap a little bit. You wouldn't see me doing that. I'd be more of the smart remarks and stuff like that, kind of dig under somebody's skin, get them even more fired up. That's more me. But no, I mean it was just always a rule. Ever since got into, we didn't fight in college. I don't think, but it's just what you did. I mean, those are your brothers out there. It's your teammates, and you would just hope that they'd have the same. So, the problem with me a lot of times is I might be in a back room, and so then half the bullpen, and then here comes me, and I'm like running if I'm in the back room watching the game on the TV or something like that, and I'd be like, oh gosh, you got to get out there, and it become come home, but out there. But a lot of times you knew if those situations were coming, so you try to be out in front. But it's more, I think, a sign of respect and showing that you'd have their backs. Obviously, there are the few fights. I was never in one where it was like, the Yankees and the Orioles or whatever, that notorious fight where Strawberry and those dudes were really just taking on Benitez or whatever. I wasn't ever in one like that. That's even a little bit more old school than me. That's 70s, 80s, and those are the dudes who would really scrap down. And that was a 90s fight. It's become less and less, I think, or it was at the time.
You're gonna
And
get suspended now. I mean,
well, yeah, you get even more trouble. And so, but you did it, and that's how it went. And there's really just never a question. It was just always, that's kind of what you were taught from the beginning. Hey, if that's going down, you got to go have their back, and you have their back, and then you settle anything and be like, why would you do that later with your teammates? But I never had an incident like that, and I always just knew that if it was going to go down, I was going to be out there, but I'd have my head on a swivel like this. Just be looking to pull or help somebody else out of a fight, or help get somebody off you, or just and try to defend myself and do whatever I needed to do.
yeah, no, for sure. The best ones were, when there'd be a fight and then the same pitcher would, when play would come back, the same pitcher would be out there, then the same guy would be at first base after he
Right,
charged. Like, great
right.
umpiring. Let's go.
Yeah,
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 let's.
yeah. And
Yeah,
look how well that turned out when it was Tino and Batista or whatever, and
yeah,
that was a whole bad thing. But those are mostly, I would say, a thing of the past. As the game moves forward, I think you'll see less and less of that.
yeah. No, probably. This is going to be an awful thing to ask, Randy, but
It's fine.
a lot of people in San Francisco know you because of the one play, and
2014 NLCS
you know what I'm talking about
in
because
three. I set
I
that.
will say your postseason numbers were very good. So that is something that you should take great pride in. I mean, they're really good. But there's that one moment, of course, the ball down the right field line, game
Mhm.
3, 2014 NLCS. Gregor Blanco bunted on you. He bunted on a lot of people, especially in the postseason. But what do you remember from that play?
I remember Crawford led off, and I think if you look up the stats, he's 0 for 5 from off me, but he has 5 walks also. I think at the end he stopped swing, he stopped swinging, and I walked him on 4 straight pitches, and then Perez came up, and I got ahead of him 1-2, and he hits a soft liner, and so he got first and second, and then Blanco comes up, and obviously know the situation. I've done it. Just like I stood there after the game and explained, I did it a trillion times in college. PFP2, we practiced the play so many times. He laid down a good bunt. It wasn't like it was a great bunt. I got to the ball. I mean, if you watch the play, I got to the ball quickly. I turn, I throw it, and Wong's going to first, and the ball's going the other way, and he tries to get it, but that's just that. And I remember seeing Crawford come around and was like, oh crap, we just lost. And then walking in, I remember sitting there, teammates being super supportive. I remember them opening the doors and knowing that they were all going to come to me. Um, and I stood up, and I remember there was like 30, 40 reporters. I mean, it was a playoff, so there was a ton of reporters, and I sat there and answered questions for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. Never gave an excuse. There's no excuse. Nothing with the ball. Nothing with Polanco being fast. I mean, he's fine fast, but I mean, I got to the ball good. I felt like a very good um, fielding pitcher. Um, got there, and it's one of those physical. It wasn't a mental mistake. It was just a physical mistake, and the ball kind of sailed on me, and it's unfortunate. And I lived in Davis at the time, so I had a lot of Giants fans. I went to see my stepdaughter and my in-laws that night. That was really what's the hardest about it is, I can sit there and answer the questions, no problem. But see, I had dinner plans with them that night. And so seeing them and that they were upset. And then I watched it, and I watched Plezak, go over the play and say, that was the only thing I ever got frustrated with not him, but just in general, is people making excuses. And the ball wasn't wet. It wasn't a speed. It was just an error. And sometimes they happen. It wasn't the moment was too big. I'd been in those moments. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't any of that. It was just an error. And, it gets magnified because it's the playoffs. But I'll tell you just a quick story. One of the funniest is we had a Christmas party my in-laws had a Christmas party that off season. And so they live in Davis, and so there's a doctor that's a good friend of the family, and his daughter, who is now a pediatric surgeon, actually, she was there, and they're huge Giants fans. And so you can just tell that it's kind of like awkward for them because they're like, and they don't want to talk about it. So I would always break the ice. But this doctor walked in. I said, Lloyd, it's really weird. I was sitting here talking to Caitlin, and she just brought up game three. What's that all about? Why would she do that? And I mean, I'm just totally embarrassed. I can't believe she just gets so, what? No, no, oh, no. And I was like, I'm just messing with you, Caitlin. I know you didn't do that. But I don't want to say I have fun with it, but I mean, it's something that happened. That you can't take back. My wife is a vice principal and she's been an educator. And so I've done a lot of stuff, work at school. And when kids around that area they'd find out that I played, they look up. And one of the first things that comes up, especially around here, is that play. And these kids will be, oh, what about game three? I'll be like, oh man, I hope you're fortunate enough to, make it to the big leagues and be able to make that mistake, So you gotta take it. It was, I'm not even sure that was the worst moment of my baseball career. I had one in Boston where I threw it to the backstop with the Yankees, and the whole crowd was going nuts. And that was where I was actually nervous. It was in my second year, it's 2001, and between that play and letting that, it was more that I felt like I let my teammates down. But the great thing about that Cardinal team is they let you know in one, like we wouldn't be here without you. The game didn't, if we weren't tied, if we had scored in other spots, all that stuff where teammates pick you up. Um, uh, is what makes being part of those teams great. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely top two worst moments of my baseball career. But I don't sit here and dwell on it. However long later, a lot of times, if I meet somebody who's a Giants fan, they find out, I'll be like, "Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome for not like I did it on purpose, but I'm like, you're
Yeah.
welcome." And anyway, you got propelled on and won the World Series, and if you didn't have that play, it'd have been different. So it's more taking it and being lighthearted about it. You can't. I mean, if Mariano can sit there and throw that ball and deal with it the way he did, and give up and then give up the hit, who it's just part of history. It's just, I mean, nobody looks back and is like, "Oh, Mariano's a terrible closer because of one throw and one blown save in the playoffs." And I saw that in person, and I saw how he reacted. I saw how he took it to the next spring training, and so I learned a lot. When you're asking about that, I learned a lot from watching him and how he dealt with that, and how he, obviously was super disappointed and upset, but that's the way baseball goes, and you just got to move on from it, and do your job. And it stinks I mean, I'd much rather have made the play and walk the next guy, and somebody Seth come in and Maynard come in and get a ground ball double play, and we go in and score and win. But that's not the way it happened. That's not the way it was written. So, like they say, everything happens for a reason, and I'm not totally sure what the reason was, but it happened for a reason, and it kind of is what it is.
Yeah, no shame. I mean, great postseason career again, Randy. And by the way, you're gonna hate me for saying this, but I was in the car driving home from middle school. Or I wasn't
Okay.
driving, but
Right.
so
That was
and
good.
we that would have been bad. We were in the I was in the back seat and the radio was on and the Giants broadcast because I was of course a day game and the Giants radio said Blanco bunts it. It's a good bunt. Choate has it. He will wing it down the right field line. And then, and all I heard was down the right field line. And I was like, oh, the game's over. That's crazy. And
Right.
second thing, I was just in the Davis area. I was covering Kings and Warriors the other day at Golden One in Sacramento. And on the way back, I picked up there's a great Raising Canes in Davis, and it's one of the few Raising
Yeah.
Canes that they have in Northern Cal. It's right in that downtown area where, yeah, so it was a pain in the butt
It's
to park.
hilarious that you say that, because when my wife sees this clip, I had to go down there recently to help somebody out, work for them. And whenever I go to Davis, because I now live outside of the Eureka area, and they don't have one here. I love Raising Cane's. I love their fries. It's like the first thing I
The
get. I get
biscuits.
a jug of sweet tea. Because it was called a different name in college. I ate it before every start. It was called Guthrie's, but it's the same thing. It's where the chicken fingers and the fries and the special sauce and the Texas toast. And I've loved that ever since college. And so, like, one of the big deals, and my wife's like, "Really? That's what you're you're looking forward to going so you have food options so that you can eat Raising Cane's every day. And I'm like, heck yeah, I am, because I don't ever get to eat it now. And yeah, so every time, I don't go down there a ton, but anymore. But when we do go down, I'm like, okay, like first meal I'm eating, if it's not the first, it's the second. We're getting Raising Cane's, or I'm getting Raising Cane's anyway. And so last
Yeah.
time I was down there for a week and a half, I ate it about 4 times. So.
Yeah. Isn't it great when you can walk into a place and see two things on the menu and go, this is amazing?
And then it's I'm a huge fan. I've always been a huge fan for the longest time. So yeah, for me, it's just like, yes, I'll just get the box combo. No slaw, please. Give me extra fries, and I'm good.
No, exactly.
And sweet tea.
That's it. So are you up near the like the Oregon area? Because Eureka's up a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's up. I'm not sure. I think it's a little over an hour away from where we're just outside in a little town called McKinleyville, so it's just outside of Eureka. I haven't really driven into Oregon, but I've driven up to like Crescent City, or up
Yeah.
in that area. So, and it's about an hour 15, just depending on who's driving and also the road conditions. But yeah, so it's not too far. We haven't really got to explore up in there too much yet, but just like the trees behind me, one of the reasons we moved up here is it's beautiful, green trees everywhere. I'm a huge fan of rain and wood burning stoves, and getting sit by our fireplace and being cold. And so the Northwest, is beautiful, and everything's green, and I think that's great.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit of it, but last thing here, what you up to now? What's going on with you? I know you mentioned that you're in education a little bit. You're doing some stuff with the schools. What is
Well,
Randy
right.
Choate
I
up to
well, I,
now?
I basically sub. I did some other things also, but I just kind of, if there's a sub job open, my wife's a vice principal at one of the local high schools in Fortuna, and so she's a vice principal there. So I sub for that high school in McKinleyville. I like to sub for the older kids, just because if they kind of give you a little talk, you can always kind of talk back to them. But it's something that really gets me out of the house. My wife, the first 2 years that I was retired or told not to play, I kind of sat at home and didn't do it. And I'm like, okay, is that I was watching baseball then. I'm like, okay, when the baseball games start, or when do sports start, and wasn't doing a whole lot. Like, I'm not a big, green thumb or any of that. My wife's like, okay. And she get home from, doing, whether she was a PE teacher and then now she's admin, and I'd have all this energy, and she's like, okay, you have to get out of the house. You have to do something, because it can't be exhausted when I come home and then you're like one of the kids at school. So, started doing some of that stuff, and just to kind of get out and do that. And now I sub at really those two high schools. And, if there's nothing to do, then I stay home and kind of do basically the chores that I'm supposed to do around the house, and just kind of enjoy this great weather, or get anything done to make life easier. Go to Costco, go to the grocery store. But if something comes up like that, then I go into school. I get to be interactive with kids, and I've even though I'm 49 going on 50, I've probably got the energy of a 15, 16, 17, 18-year old, always talking, like I said. And so it's good to get out there and kind of interact with those kids and do something. And then I'm not, at 100 when my wife's coming home at, say, 25, 30%, because she's exhausted from the day. So, when those are available, I go in there and do that. And if not, I kind of try to find something to do to keep me busy, and, just kind of enjoying being retired.
I love it. Love it. And last thing. Are you related to Jack Choate, the Giants minor leaguer?
Not that I know of. I mean, I'm from Texas, and it's real small. I have I have a sister, and I have two cousins. So we didn't have a real big. Well, excuse me, four cousins, and
The other two are gonna listen and just hate you after this. Now
no, no,
it's
no,
over. It's
no,
over
it's just
now.
we used to really hang out too. But no, we yeah. So I have those cuts. So we had a really small family, and I haven't found anybody like that I'm related to. I don't know. Just I mean, obviously they have a great last name, I think. But as far as I'm aware, no, I'm not not
Okay.
related.
Figured I'd ask because he's a
No.
he's a minor leaguer in the system, and he was taken up pretty high in the draft to the point where it was like it wasn't the first round, but it was one of those other rounds where like it was kind of televised, I think, and
Mhm.
I could be wrong on that, but I was like, oh, I wonder if he's related to Randy, but
Hmm.
guess not. Anyways, Randy, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know I took way too much of your time, but I really appreciate it, and it was a blast.
No problem. I enjoy doing this. I don't do it very often. So, like I said, when you're kind of living and you're not, anywhere doing something at the time, I have plenty of time, and I enjoy telling the stories. It makes it great and runs through. And a lot of my buddies, especially that live around here, they love listening to this stuff, and they probably hear a lot of this stuff all the time. But anytime that I get invited to do something, I try to do it because I just really like being on these and kind of telling my story.
Awesome. Well, love giving the platform as well, and everybody could go ahead and listen to the podcast on Twitter and or follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. Go check out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Go check out all that fun stuff. More to come, and we will see you next time.